Hey, everybody. Welcome back. Welcome back. Thrilled to have you here. I love that we get to live stream these, but remember, you can check out all the new episodes every Tuesday and Thursday at bizbookpubhub.com. And of course, pay attention to when I'm live streaming because you never know what conversations you can catch in the moment and then re-listen to when they're aired on the podcast. Without any further delay, let me introduce this episode. Ever feel like your book will never be finished? You're not alone. Every author hits that point when they doubt, question, and even want to give up. But pushing through those moments is what separates a dream from reality. Once your book is done, a whole new journey begins, publishing and sharing your message with the world. And this journey doesn't have to be one you take alone. The right strategies, partnerships, and community support can make all the difference in turning your book into a tool that amplifies your business impact. I work with authors to ensure their books reach the readers who need them most and drive meaningful engagement. My strategic book launch program focuses on building connections that matter, conversations, media opportunities, and business growth. If you're ready to take your book to the next level, you can schedule a complimentary 30-minute book launch brainstorming session at booklaunchbrainstorm.com. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our panelists who will share what it's really like to be a business author. Nikki Green wrote Chameleon Mindset, Creative Ways to Embrace Change and Build Mental Resilience to Transform Your Career and Life, an engaging, research-based guide that helps you embrace change, build resilience, and adapt with confidence using creative strategies and interactive exercises for lasting personal and professional growth. Robin Hatcher wrote Standing Ovation Presentations, Discover Your Communication Actor Type and Let It Shine, a dynamic guide to master face-to-face and virtual communication using Hollywood-inspired actor typing and the 4 V's, visual, vocal, verbal, and value to help you stand out, connect authentically, and shine in any interaction. And Steve Iacovelli wrote Your Queer Career Workplace Advice from the Gay Leadership Dude, a practical and engaging guide that empowers LGBTQ plus professionals and allies to navigate workplace challenges, embrace authenticity, and thrive in their careers with expert insights, real-life strategies, and a touch of humor. Please join me in welcoming Nikki, Robin, and Steve. Welcome all to the show. Nikki, we're going to kick things off with you. Just want to get a better sense from each of you about who your book is for. Who's the audience of readers that you had in mind? So, Nikki, welcome, and kindly share with us who your reader is.
Yeah, awesome to be here with such amazing other authors and just to learn a little bit more about their audiences as well. Over the last few years, a lot of people have been through some sort of change and transition, and that's really where I help people and what Chameleon Mindset is all about. Anybody that's been in these life transitions and they're wondering, what is that next step I need to take to change my career, to maybe leave my career entirely to start a new business, or maybe it's something more personal they're looking for. So I love helping people make that first big step.
I think that it probably applies to most everybody listening right now. So we all need a touch of that. Robin, if you jump in and share with us who your book is for.
Yeah, my book is for business professionals and individuals who just want to get better at presenting themselves and communicating. Like being like in my book, not my literal book, but in my mind, every conversation is a presentation. And what happens is, like, if you're selling, if you're managing, if you're leading, if you're talking, if you're selling from the stage, you have to get better at presenting yourself. And there is not one size fits all, which is why I delve into my actor types to find the way that you present, being better at how you can be you and owning your own value. So it's for all those people.
I've had the opportunity to see you present on this information in a room full of speakers, many of whom probably thought they already knew what they needed to know. We were all talking about how much we learned. So very valuable insights, and I'm glad we have access to it as a book as well. Steve, I am thrilled to bring you on here. You've got a couple of books. Tell us about this one in particular. Who is the audience for it?
Yeah, your queer career is really aimed toward LGBTQ plus as well as awesome allies who are navigating their workplace world, and so it's kind of the companion to Pride Leadership, which was my previous book, which talks about leadership theory through the rainbow lens, where your queer career is applying those concepts to real world situations, a la Dear Abby kind of thing.
Now, and back to Nikki for a second. Is this your first book, Nikki?
No, Chameleon Mindset was my fourth book, and I'm on my way to number 7.
Holy cow. Oh my gosh. Okay, so we're going to pick your brain a lot today. Robin, is this your first book?
This is my first book. This
Okay.
is my first and my second book. Because I actually did, because I published it many years ago, not many, a few years ago, and then I republished it in 2022. So yeah.
Since you're more recently a newer author, I want to ask this question to you, and then we'll see if anyone has anything else they want to add. But I'm curious about what you do, Robin, to move past the inner voices that a lot of us who are writing books, particularly the first time we try to do this, why should I write this book? Who am I to write this book? Right? Like, I have information. Does anyone need this information? Like, there's just a lot of like, oh, I don't know how to do this. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff. But you didn't let that slow you down, and you still put this all out there. So what helps you commit and be someone who's really followed through with that intention?
Deadlines. You know, deadlines are a huge thing. It's like every time, both times when I was doing the original and when I did the revamp, is I had a publisher who gave me a deadline. But when you're talking about the innate thing, I was teaching in a college setting for a while, and I was teaching presentation skills, and I was trying to get people to get a book. And I would go to the college bookstore and I would see these books on presentation skills, and I would open them and they were full of this teeny tiny print, and they were like $65 or $100. And it just made me gag. And there was no way I was going to get my students to buy those books. So I really wanted something for people to be able to get in a reasonable rate and have it be fun, not have this like tiny little like logical ways of why you should speak. It was just, they were awful. And so that motivated me a lot, because I knew that there was a place in the market that people just needed something that they would be quick and easy. One of the greatest comments I get, that it's an easy read. You can go straight through it and you can get exactly what they need. And people use it as their little Bible. They can go back and they can reference things from it. So it motivated me to give somebody else other options than to what was out there.
That's awesome. Did you actually get it sold in university bookstores?
Actually, it is because where I was teaching at Baruch, and this was something recent. They actually called me up and they said, we want to put it on the business recommended reading list. So
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think breaking into those spaces is its own, there's a lot of strategies to get into that particular market. And, you know, to have a book that speaks to that and have professors who are asking for it and then using it. And yeah, so that's great. Congratulations on that full circle. So Steve, you've got these 2 books. So it's kind of, you know, fairly recently you were a new author for the first time.
Five books so far.
You have 5. Oh my gosh. I had no idea you had 5
Well,
books.
I have to say,
people, Robin.
my first one was my dissertation, so I just wanted the ISBN credits. So it doesn't really count.
Okay, so here's the question I have then for you and Nikki. I'll start with you, Steve. When you first got started, before you knew what you know now, which is vast, there's a lot you know now. What did you think success looked like? What was the important metrics that you thought, I have to do X for my book to be a success when you were starting this author journey? And then, yeah, I'd like to also hear how that's changed. But were there certain beliefs that you had back then about like, if only blank, then I'll know this book really knocked it out of the park? Like, what was important to you?
I was like naive and did the whole Kevin Costner, if you write it, they will come, to paraphrase, which was completely wrong. So, but my thought was like, well, I'm going to put this book out there and it's automatically going to be an Amazon bestseller. And Pride Leadership was not. So I did win a bunch of awards, which that was really cool. But the strategy between Pride Leadership and Your Career shifted. You know, I thought it was going to be volumes of books, but then I started realizing that it's the keynotes, it's the leadership program that I built using Pride Leadership as the textbook, and this whole little infrastructure came about. So when Your Career came out 5 years later, I wasn't about selling the number of books. It was, how can I use this to continue talking about the other book and all the different things that are happening? So I want these together so you see how they work together. They're the same font on the cover. It's the black versus the white, but you still have the rainbow thing. Yeah, it's all strategic. And so we created this little ecosystem, which I didn't think about when I first did Pride Leadership.
Yeah. Nikki, how about you? What would you add to what Steve just said? I saw you nodding along.
Yeah, I mean, Steve definitely nailed it on the head. Is in the beginning, you don't really know, right? You're trying to create that one standalone thing and hope more than your mom will buy it. And that's really where you go. And I wrote a lot of incredible personal stories in that first book. And I was amazed at the other people who didn't know me, who bought the book, who found parallels. And I put it together as a lever for my speaking business, but it became a lever for my entire business in so many other ways. I also write fiction novels, and so it got me closer to just the writing community in general, and many of them are trying to create businesses around writing. So it just really blossomed this whole thing of pieces I didn't expect to happen, starting with just that very basic idea that it was going to be, the cornerstone for my speaking business.
I think that piece that Steve said about if you build it, they will come. And Nikki, you were like, I thought that it was going to be this like little thing and it turned into like a much bigger thing. I mean, this is part of what I think it's important to hang out with other, not just other authors, but successful authors who have built the business, people who have leveraged the book to help them grow their business, people who are turning into speaking, coaching, consulting, coursework, all that good stuff, who also created like workbooks or whatever it might be. Because a lot of these ideas, when we first get started, I think the only thing we can think about is the deadline of publishing. Like my new book that I'm working on right now is called Don't Just Hit Publish, Launch Your Book, An Entrepreneur's Guide to Reviews and Revenue. And I frame it that way because the publication timeline is just like the whole end all be all. And you think, okay, and then some people are like, oh, #1 bestseller, that would be nice. Yeah, I should do that. So I'm curious, Robin, did you fall into any of those? I mean, you're part of the National Speakers Association, which is how you and I know each other. And that's where I got a lot of this messaging, both about you need a book and don't worry about these other things. But what were the metrics that you initially thought were important? And besides, like, you got this result around getting the book picked up by university, which is awesome. But how did you think about the #1 bestseller status or books being sold or all that?
It was interesting. Like Nikki said, I wrote a book as a calling card. And that's what, that's the advice that I was going with. It's like, it's just a calling card. It's something that I could sell because I've heard from so many people that you're never going to get rich writing a book. And that's true in most cases. So I really wanted it to have like a notch in the bedpost. And something that say, yes, I have a book and you can buy it here. Now, recently it turned into something else. I'm doing a keynote and they didn't have my full fee, but it was for a company that has a different budget for books. So they are paying like part of my full fee and they're buying 300 books to make up the rest. So it's become something like that. So it's awesome. It's a great, yeah.
that for speakers is an excellent observation that it's not about individual units sold. The only time I personally, as a launch strategist, focus on individual units sold is during this sort of soft launch period between the publication date and the date we announce it out loud to everyone, which is the launch date 2.5, 3 weeks later, because I'm trying to get verified reviews. So I want people to buy the book to leave the review. Therefore, it's a verified review. And that's why I'm tracking individual sales. But it's more that I'm tracking individual reviews. But after that, you want the reviews to stand out. So when people are thinking about booking you to speak or buying your book in bulk, it has that credibility. It'll just make that a little bit smoother. But yes, there are separate budgets in a lot of companies. And sometimes they can't pay you everything or maybe nothing to speak. But then they can buy hundreds of books at cost. To your cost, but you obviously mark it up and you're still getting some good money from it. I mean, there's just, I feels like a lot of possibility that you can't imagine. Nikki, what's something like, finish the sentence, because I'm an author, blank was possible. Like you've done so much, I imagine, but like, what's something that stands out to you?
Yeah, building the chameleon community around it. That's really what became possible. It starts with such a small idea, but it's such a great entry level product for people to get to know you at, 20, $30, whatever it might be, however they get a hold of it. And to be able to expand that into a whole community where you have all these wonderful entrepreneurs supporting each other in so many different businesses, that is really like the dream come true for me.
Yeah, and it's hard to envision when you're just sitting there by yourself trying to get the ideas out of your head, right? Like it's hard to imagine that kind of success when you still don't think you have it in you to finish a book. And there's a lot of people listening who probably have half-finished books, plural. I just met someone the other day who was like, I have 7 books that I'm in the middle of. I'm like, all right, pick one. Pick one. Let's talk about how you're going to finish that one, But just I think that success begets success. So, Robin, are you thinking about writing more books? Is this part of the overall plan or?
Yes, I am. I have to write a new book because this book I love dearly, and it's about communication, about presentation skills. And when I first published it and when I first wrote it, that's the lane that I was mostly playing in. Right now, I am playing in communicating, leading without drama. So I have a keynote called Drama Detox. I have a keynote called Own It While You Hone It, and another keynote, Leading Without Drama. So I need a book that supports that. And I'm really looking forward to finding the time to get that done.
Well, the good news is that you have done it once before.
Right.
So a lot of those inner voices are probably quieter because you have done it.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing from my National Speakers Association colleagues, the best way to sell book 1 is to publish books 2 and 3. I feel like that seed was planted early on. Nikki, you're like many, many books into this. Is there a process where you decide whether or not to write a book? I know you kind of move between genres. Like, how do you think about your author sort of portfolio going forward?
Yeah, having done over 500 speaking engagements over the last 2 years, the material itself continues to evolve, which is so fantastic because now I can take live feedback from the audience and really start to interact with it and say, okay, well, that was the 101 class of Chameleon Mindset. What's the 201? What's the more advanced one? How do we get people deeper in emotional intelligence and creative adaptability and some of the individual topics? So each one becomes a new volume, but deeper into each one. So I'm excited about that as I continue.
One of the things I want to underscore that you just said, Nikki, that's so important is the idea of testing out material live. I think a lot of authors I've met write in secret. I've had people get on my brainstorming session and sort of whisper it to me across Zoom that they're working on a book. And I'm like, who are you hiding this from? And I've heard all kinds of answers. I've heard people afraid someone's going to steal their IP. And I said, well, then you're not using it. You're not talking up your IP enough. Like if you were talking about it on podcasts and writing blog posts and writing social posts and writing articles, like in being quoted in magazines, like, it would be yours, whether you wrote a book or not. Or they're afraid of being held accountable and failing, and like not doing it, like saying it out loud and then not doing it. I'm with you, Robin. Deadlines matter to me. I am talking as we record this in late February about a book. When this airs in May, I will be really close to publishing. In fact, if you go to robbiesamuels.com/launch team, you could join the launch team while that's still live and see how I do this. But I'm giving myself a pretty tight time frame and I'm talking about it because that's what's going to get me to the finish line. Nikki, what's been something that's helped you finish? Because I think you just heard Robin say, I got to make time. How are you making time to keep writing books?
Yeah, I am very fortunate that here in Chicago, I belong to an incredible writing group who I stumbled upon during the pandemic, and they'd already been together for 10, 15 years with many established members. Every single week, there are classes where you can just drop in and either learn something from an established writer or just sit quietly and write or, sit and have a cocktail and not write at all, whatever works for you that particular week. But I think that sense of community is really what's continued to help me write. Even if it's other things, that's not the book itself, just keep in that habit of writing regularly. So that way the ideas flow more freely and you can finish them off later when you have that quiet time.
I love the idea of a writing community. I know there's lots of different spaces around the world that do this, and there's such value. because the writing itself is a very solitary experience. Like it's between you and the paper, or you and the screen, or you and the ChatGPT AI voice bot thing that you're talking to. But it's like it's you. But if you do it, I know, like I've also done like co-working sessions on Zoom, which is just, hey, what are you working on? What are you working on? And then go and get some stuff done. So there's like a little bit of accountability and community built into it. I like the idea of just finding those resources and also the learning space to keep growing. Steve, how are you kind of approaching finding time? I mean, you and Nikki sound like you've built out empires around your books, which takes up a lot of time. So how do you think about making space for ongoing writing?
When I was starting Pride Leadership, my publisher said, "You've probably already written stuff." And I have a training company. So I'm like, "You're right. I have scripts and things." So I started pulling that in. And so when I started Your Queer Career, I started several years ago. Like I said, the idea is it's kind of like Dear Abby, but Dear Gay Leadership Dude. And I answer questions that kind of touch upon the concepts in Pride Leadership. So it's like, Dear Gay Leadership Dude, I think my boss is homophobic. What do I do? And then in 1,200 words or less, I would address that. Well, actually, I write for the Central Florida LGBTQ plus paper. I've done writing for other national queer organizations and publications. And so I've started to purposely write those things in bite-sized chunks so that I can assemble them and put them in volume 2 of Your Queer Career, because it's a rinse and repeat formula and the questions don't stop, because I do a lot of coachings with queer and ally leaders. And so when I hear a new one, I'm like, oh, I write it down in the central file and then eventually I'll answer it and then just kind of sum it up. So it's like, like I say in Pride Leadership, how do you eat the elephant? Or how do you eat an elephant? You don't, because they're beautiful creatures. But if you were to eat one, one bite at a time. And that's kind of how writing is. Just find those little bits of time and carve it out. And eventually you have a whole elephant.
Yeah, I don't identify as a writer. I'm working on my 4th book. I write regularly. It's not my first medium. It's not the first place I'd go to communicate, but I've gotten over a lot of the hangups I had around the idea of writing. And I think one of them was what you just spoke to, was that you can chunk your writing. It's figuring out like, what does a chunk look like for you? Write for other things, whether writing for a blog post, writing to create a presentation, all the other ways, lots of ways to create transcripts. There's lots of ways to do something that doesn't feel like I'm sitting down to write a book and I'm staring at a blank page. I also learned that I could write in the language that I speak, like meaning the same tonality and flow. And prior to writing a book, I had only written academic papers, and I hated writing academic papers. They were so dry and boring, and making sure every single paragraph had a footnote just in case, so I don't get called out for plagiarism. Like, it's just felt really stressful and not fun. And it took me a while to mentally realize that that's not what writing looks like out in the real world, because that's a lot of what I think Robin was looking at. The reason the fonts were so small is because they want to make the books as thin as possible and weigh as little as possible for shipping purposes, which doesn't make the end user experience great, but also the dryness that often associates that kind of writing is not really that fun. Robin, your book really is fun and has that, like it breathes, it comes to life as people are in it. What would you like to add, Robin?
Well, it's funny because when you're saying like the first mediums that you worked in, my first medium was writing plays, screenplays, and soap operas. So, I wrote for 2 daytime soap operas. So, I'm like really comfortable with drama, and I'm with dialogue and action and fun. And when I wrote my screenplays, it was all about creating like the action and where you're going. There's a whole structure to it. So that's why when I was just reversed. When I thought about writing a business book, I'm like, how am I going to do that? Because they don't talk, so that's why I had to come up with my own actor type system, something that brought some of me to it, something about my experience. And then as soon as I got onto that, I realized it's like, oh, okay, now I know what direction to go in with this book. Yeah.
That's awesome. I want to switch gears and talk a little bit about reviews. And it looks like, Steve, your book, Pride Leadership, is probably the best example we have in this circle that I can find in the instant that I'm looking. So, Nikki, if you've got a book with a lot of reviews, do tell. But, I'm curious, looking over here at your book, it's not just that you have a lot of reviews. You've got 66 ratings and 23 written reviews. So I want to first explain to people listening that the reviews are different than the ratings. The ratings are the stars. You don't have to buy a book to leave stars 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you actually don't need to write a book to buy a book to leave a review either. But a verified review, which has more weight when Amazon's deciding where to put your book in a search result page, those require you buying the book. So, Steve, how did you approach thinking about the importance of getting these reviews? And honestly, even getting more than 20 separates you from a lot of people. It's amazing how low the bar has to be, because most people hit publish, they don't get any, they get 3. And it's like their mom, their aunt, their cousin. It's like, but you must have had a plan to kickstart that. And then how did you think about that for your next book? So
yeah, and I had advice before I launched Pride Leadership. So I did a formal book launch pre-COVID. So there's that, where I bought a whole bunch of books. I took over an existing event, actually the local LGBTQ plus chamber does their monthly mixer. I said, hey, I'm part of this group. Can I sponsor half sponsor? They're like, absolutely. I said, can I give everybody in attendance, at least up to a certain number, a book? They're like, absolutely. So I did a book signing, and then inside each book was, please go on Amazon and review. And we got a lot that way. And so, yeah, it was a bit of bribery, but it was also a gift. And so that was kind of nice. And then every time someone talks about my book, if I'm at a conference or I'm at an event and someone says, oh my gosh, I loved your book, I'm like, great, please go write a review. It means so much to me. And I also bought the URL steveonamazon.com. And so it redirects me. So people remember that. They're like, well, how do I find it? I'm like, no, just go to steveonamazon.com and you can write a review. They're like, that's easy. And it was really, really making it simple for the end user. So Your Queer Career, we did a little bit of that. I actually was more focused on doing the bestseller part for that one. So that's where we kind of got that traction. But yeah, the importance of having those reviews cannot be underestimated, and plan for that pre-launch.
Yeah, they take quite a bit of effort. Nikki, what would you like to add? Is there some way you could approach this?
Well, definitely, I'm going to have to pick Steve's brain for my next one, because it sounds like he's got some great ideas. Yeah, there was kind of an unfortunate incident where I had to fire my hybrid publisher right before my launch date, and they were supposed to be helping me get that final mile of all those reviews. And so I ended up doing the final part of the launch myself. And what I really focused on was, at the end of the day, I'm probably going to sell more books at my speaking engagements to my coaching clients. And so I have reviews on my website, on my social media, which really talk more holistically about my coaching theory than the book itself. So definitely something I want to improve. So Steve, I'll be calling you. But yeah.
Well, so let me offer a little bit of advice for those who are listening, kind of piggybacking up what Steve just shared. So reviews are social proof that stay on the book sales page. I'm with you, Nikki, about the emphasis on book sales, 100%. Or leveraging a book to be a speaker or a coach or a consultant, because that's really where the money comes from. But a lot of times the people who are hiring us, one of the places they're going to go is check your Amazon page, because it is a search engine. And the number one bestseller ribbon, if you're able to get it, is fleeting. Literally could be as little as an hour. Yeah. Maybe you'll grab the screenshot, maybe you won't, and then it's gone. There's no evidence that it was ever there. And so that's the difference between that as an emphasis versus getting 20, 50, 100 plus Amazon reviews, particularly if you're in a really crowded market and you're trying to compare yourself to other people and they're like looking at 3 possible books. Well, that would help move them in one direction. And I think there are some people who have, 223 ratings and 8 written reviews. And I'm like, what is that? Like, what did you do there? So the written reviews are what really matter. And the process that I have includes collecting those reviews in advance, and particularly getting them from likely prospects and referral partners, which means that you as the author, or the business owner in this case, are in conversation for a couple of months with those people in your network who are best positioned to either benefit from the book or put you in front of the people who would benefit, which then leads to revenue and media opportunities. It is not an easy process. My last book, the part of how I became a book launch strategist was me jokingly lamenting that I was stuck at 247 reviews, which no one here wants to call funny because it's outrageous. But I wanted 251 so I could just say over 250. And I got the first 240 in 1 month, and then I couldn't get any more. And then I finally got 7 more, like 7 months later. And then I was just sitting there. It was just like even though I had done such a strong launch, like getting those last few was incredibly painful. I did get it. That last book is at 251, over 250. But yeah, all my books have over 200 reviews, and it's a real process to go through. But if you're getting them from your prospects and referral partners, you're building a pipeline to the speaking, the coaching, the consulting, the community groups you all have. It is a process. I'm curious though, other than reviews, Robin, as the newer author among us, was there something else that might have been kind of a challenge? Was it finding the right support for getting the book published? Was it getting the time? Like, what's the thing that you feel you overcame, or maybe more than one, pick one or two, that was a challenge as you were getting ready to work on this book?
I don't know, because of the original book, one of the things about the reviews is like I'm listening to all of you and just squirming because I didn't do anything, and like I asked people, and then it was a glitch because my original book is still on Amazon with some reviews, and then when the new edition came out, what happened was I asked for reviews and they would go to Amazon and they would find the old book and then they would review that.
Oh, you didn't.
So Amazon would not
No.
let me combine. And then
Oh boy.
like somebody said, don't take, because of SEO, don't take the old edition down. So anyway, but back to your question.
Yeah.
I really think that, that whole idea of whether you're going to go with the publisher. I also went with the hybrid publishers both times, 2 different ones. I had to get rid of the first one. And doing it that way or not that way, Amazon KDP is great. And there's that thought that everybody has is like, yeah, but is that real? Can I get a real publisher? And, a real publisher. And I remember I had a book agent for a while who was really working hard. And then it became, you needed the platform and you needed all of that. So my advice would be to really, back to one of your questions before, really think about what you want this book to do, not what status you want to feel like you have because of the book, and those are 2 different things. And when you really put down your priorities about what you want this book to do and what you're writing it for, then sometimes it doesn't really matter of how it gets out. And so I feel like that's what I would say. And that's what I learned.
I'm like, preach, like preach, bring us to church. That's great. Like, so true. I think that in the National Speakers Association world, there is definitely you need a book. You need a book. You need a book. So everyone rushes, your book's like a business card. You need a book. So everyone rushes to do the book, but they don't really have a plan for how the book fits with the larger business, which seems like a major oversight because they were getting the book but they just rush to do it. And I also know that there are people who are very hung up on being traditionally published. So they're going to wait years, because it could be like months to years to get the book agent and the proposal written, and then months to years for them to shop you around and try to get a deal. And then even from that point, it's 18 months to 2.5, 3 years to have your book come out. It's like, meanwhile, you could have been Nikki and have 7 books done, right? Like, ta-da! Like, it's just,
don't wait, just go.
It's just like a question, like, don't wait, just go, and learn better quality over time.
Yeah.
It sounds like there are some difficulties of finding good people. So I'm going to say 2 things. One is bizbookpubhub.com is a resource for people who have experience working with entrepreneurs who are writing books to help them grow a business. And one of our hub partners is Jen T. Grace from Publish Your Purpose, who is the hybrid publisher that worked with Steve. And he did not say, "Oh, I had to fire her." So we're gonna go with this.
Oh my God. If I can jump in, Ravi, one of the things that Jen had asked me while we were going down the path of Pride Leadership was, "What's your personal brand?" I'm like, what? She's like, your personal brand. I said, well, Top Dog Learning Group, my business. She's like, no, that's your business. And that was like the start and the spark of really thinking about this as being a bigger thing than just one book that I'm in the midst of editing. And I get no kickback, but I am so happy with Jen and her team. That's why, I mean, she has 3 of my books. There's a workbook that's in between these 2, and I'm pretty happy.
I think having access to reputable resources, and there are several hybrid publishers, and here's a new term for you, probably assisted self-publishers, and there's a blend between the two. There's an overlap. Basically, assisted self-publishers are very clearly just there to help you get the book published. It's a payment system. They're not putting it under their name. They're not taking royalty. It's like very, very, very clear from the start. That's true also for some hybrid publishers. And then some hybrid publishers, they put it under their name and they do more, and some have 2 sort of tracks depending on, right? So there's all a bunch of options. But what's nice is when you work with these companies, they've already found people to work with. But on the other hand, if you are like me and you like having a lot of say about who your editor is and what your cover designers like are, like, you want to have more control, and that's where you end up being like self-published and self-managed. But it's a project management like skill set you have to have on top of everything else. So having somebody who's holding you accountable, whether you're have a hybrid publisher or assisted self-publisher or just a really good VA, is really important to keep all these pieces and these plates spinning. But yeah, bizbookpubhub.com, great resource. And also part of what we've been doing is building a community of authors and writers, because then they talk to each other about what they like or don't like. And Jen actually has a great resource on the hub on her profile. It's a list of questions to ask a publisher before hiring them. So want to call that out. It's a particularly good resource. And actually Ruth Schwartz is an assistant self-publisher, and Ruth has on her hub profile like over 90 steps of self-publishing. She created an ebook and was giving away this ebook, 90 steps to which makes you realize I don't want to do this myself. That's what that's a good resource, because people are like, oh man, like did not know that. I'm curious, does anyone here wave at me if you have a really good marketing strategy that led to specifically book sales, kind of like Robin earlier talking about being able to sell through a separate budget in a company, or something that happened. Nikki, what were you able to do that move quantities of books?
Yeah, well, and definitely this is why, I was attracted to spending more time with you, Robbie, is using other people's audiences, because I had so many authors in my network, both fiction writers and nonfiction. I created a bonus for pre-launch sales where if they bought a pre-launch copy of my book, they would also get copies of these other books or other materials from them. And so it created this really cool buzz where I had people coming from all over the place, non-traditional things that you wouldn't think of. They weren't just other business authors, but there were people that write horror and kids books and like a little bit of everything. And I found all these wonderful niches to be able to come and I could support them in their journey, because a lot of people were in transformations. So it was really cool to be able to do that. And then I just got to ship out this giant stack of books, not just mine, and help other authors too. So
that's very cool. And of course, we connected, Nikki, all of us here on the call, through one of my Kindle cross promotion campaigns. If you go to bizkindlepromo.com, you can find out about when the next one's happening. These happen 3 times a year. We all lower our Kindle book price to 99 cents and cross promote 75 plus books. Lots of new audiences. A lot of what Nikki's saying, it's like people who would not ordinarily have come across your book now learning about it. And I think even more so, the other authors learning about it and learning about you, and the collaborations that came of it. Was really cool, particularly as I started to group people into certain categories together, and you were like, whoa, I need to talk to these other people who are in my category. So a lot of transformation, by the way. I put personal transformation as one of the categories. Ooh, that was a big category. So Nikki, you got a lot of people to talk to. Steve, was there anything that you wanted to share about what you've done to move books?
Yeah. So what I did is I created a product, was called Book Club in a Box. And so since I was targeting employee resource groups, especially LGBT employee resource groups and some other queer business groups, if they bought X number of books through me, so then I could just immediately go in, ship them, they would get a discount on the Q&A with the author that we do for free or at a big discount. And so I said, we'll do that X number of months afterwards, whenever you want. So if you want to do it for Pride Month, buy your books in March, and then we'll schedule it down the road. And then it's just one big giant book. And it's also then kind of advertising, because I get exposed to all the folks who are part of that group.
so you're selling into companies at scale.
Correct.
And then making it not just a one-off lunch and learn during Pride Month, which is, fine,
Yeah.
but it's a much longer engagement with the company as a whole, and it's more touch points with all these employees. That's really cool and very, very creative. I love these like different examples. I'm also curious about business goals with writing and how people, like, one of the questions I ask authors when they get on my brainstorming session, and I will say over half of them cannot answer this question. So don't feel bad if you can't answer this question. But so I always say, like, okay, so I'm reading your book and I love it. How do I find you? And what's the next thing I can do with you for free or for money? And, it sounds like Nikki and Steve, you two, like, maybe didn't have all that in place when it got started, right? And then you were like, you built it. But I still talk to authors who forget to put like their email in their book. They don't put contact info, and they don't have opt-ins. So does anyone here like doing creative things, opt-ins and QR codes, bonus material, workbooks? All right, Nikki.
Yeah, that was definitely what I learned by the time I got to Chameleon Mindset, is how could I make the book actually interactive? Especially a lot of my clients are on the younger side. And so actually having a physical book, they're kind of like, but there's QR codes, there's playlists, there are free downloads of mini courses, there are videos that you can go watch on YouTube. And so it's not just about that content that's right there, but it's about connecting with other things throughout. And then you can also join part of the free community. So there's free resources throughout the whole thing and QR codes. And that's way I can actually track where they're going and what they're clicking into and get their information, because that's one of the hardest things when you sell on places like Amazon is you don't actually know who bought your book. So
yeah, absolutely. I'm having that kind of opt-in that collects the contact information means that now you have a way to reach them, to tell them about the next, resource, next course, next thing that's happening. That's awesome. Steve, it looked like you had something to add.
Yeah, so I bought, and it's pretty inexpensive, a learning management system, which was ideally just to do one class, which was going to be my queer leadership class using my book. And then this was right at the beginning of COVID. I'm like, this LMS is so powerful. It's actually now my entire website. So I can easily put my ebook, and then we'll do promotions on social media like, hey, use this code and get it for free for this limited time. So then they're registering through me. I'm collecting contact information. Now they're part of my mailing list, and I start sending things out. And then we also do a free, once a month, a free LGBT and ally networking event. And I'll give away a book, of course it's an ebook, so it doesn't cost me anything. I already have their emails because they signed up for the webinar or the networking event. And it started creating this community piece. And it's just been really cool to see. So kind of like Nikki, finding those ways to interact and get them together based upon the book and the Gay Leadership Dude, but it just became this big thing.
Little note for something you just said. If folks sign up for KDP Select, when they upload their file to KDP, they are locking themselves in for the next 90 days and will auto renew, by the way, to only have their book be available through KDP. Yeah. No, not on your website, not for free on your website, not in Barnes & Noble. Just that's it, just one place. There are maybe some benefits to that. You get listed in this Kindle Unlimited library, which is confusing. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of it anymore, and I no longer do it for any of my books, and I don't recommend it. But you need to know that if that's still in effect, even if you stop it, you're still obligated to not share that book anywhere else until the 90 days is up. Yep. So if you're listening and you're like, oh, I want to do this thing that Steve just mentioned, that would be really cool. Yes, but make sure you're not already kind of under that, because I don't know who would find out, but like, you don't want to mess up your connection to the Amazon marketplace. That wouldn't be good.
And the same thing with the audiobook, like you make a decision, do you want to exclusive on Audible or not? And everyone's like, don't. And I love that, because I just basically took the files, made it a class on my LMS, and then I can give that puppy away for free as a lead gen if I really want to.
Yeah, actually my first book, my lead magnet from the paperback was the audio files. I never uploaded it to Audible. I just put them on a website. You can either play it on the website or download it onto an MP3. And it's a password protected site. I mean, it was rudimentary. My skills have definitely improved since then, but like, it wasn't an LMS. It was just a plugin, and it allowed me to collect an email address for something that felt really valuable. and I have a podcast, so I had the equipment. Like, you know what I mean? It was just a matter of making it happen.
Yeah.
It's creativity as you can get. Robin, any bonus content or things
I
related?
do.
To
I actually have an online quiz for people to figure out what their actor type is. And
Nice.
so that is put in the book at different places. So if you go on my website, take the quiz, then of course I get their email addresses from that. So yeah, that's the one thing. And were I to write when I write my next book, I'm going to add a lot of stuff because I have this millennial son who I was saying something about a book that I recommended to him, and he said, "Millennials don't read." Like, okay.
Yeah, you have to know your audience to know, like, you know, whether like I don't have audiobooks for my second and third book, and I was very like I made a decision not to do it because they were very they're more like step-by-step manual type stuff. So the workbook material that I gave as a bonus content felt more important. So those who got the Kindle version could then get a PDF of the step-by-step to follow along. And then occasionally people are like, where's the audiobook? And I'm like, it's just not that kind of book. But like now my next book, I'm like, I'm going to have to probably come up with like the audio version. Like it's becoming more important depending on your audience and who those buyers are. We always got to go back to that. But then I also think other people feel compelled to have an LMS before they actually have a course, or to do audiobooks before they have sold any books. Like I think knowing that there's some success behind it makes a lot of sense. But kudos to all of you for having a plan for getting people to actually give you an email address, because that's kind of important. I have landing pages. I have 2 different ones I'll mention. If you're in the book, there's a link. Like my second book has robbiesamuels.com/toolkit. The book is called Small List, Big Results, Launch a Successful Offer, no matter the size of your email list. So if you go to my website /toolkit, it'll give you access to the bonus content. If you don't have the book yet, I direct everyone to smalllistbigresults.com, which gives you the same access, but it has all the marketing language. It has the has my bio, the editorial reviews, screenshots of the number ones that I've got. I mean, right, it's got all. See, the people who already have the book don't need that. They just need to know how to download the bonus content. So sometimes thinking that journey, the reader versus the hopeful reader journey, and thinking about how to bring people in. But I basically say on the smalllistbigresults.com page, hey, before you go and get the book, do you want to just grab the bonus content now? You know, and then they could bypass it and go to Amazon, but then they're going to Amazon through my affiliate link, which, you know, I don't know how many pennies I've collected over the years, but it's pennies.
Yeah, right.
And it is, I've been looking into bookshop.org, which is a way to sell books through online, but like crediting back to independent bookstores. And I think it's a great idea once your launch is done. They're talking about adding Kindle in the next few months. We'll hear more about this. They don't call it Kindle, ebooks, because Kindle's proprietary. Yeah. But it's still, there's some flaws in the system. I would like to see more of that work, but it feels like hard to get consumers to change their habit. And if they already have a Kindle device, they want to be able to read their book on that. And currently that's not going to happen. So I'm looking into more. I mean, I know I'm saying this in the context of, I know what's happening in the world, friends, when we talk about Amazon, but independent authors, this is like the best place for them to get their work out there and be seen in a big marketplace. So we can't discount that and the importance of that. So in our roundup question here, I would love just advice you have. It might be something we've already talked about that you want to kind of reemphasize, or something else you want to bring up. Advice you have for someone who is writing that book to help them grow their business. Steve, I'm going to kick this off with you and then go to Nikki. Steve, what is a piece of advice you have for that writer?
That as a writer, as an author, you have 2 jobs. It's to get the content out, but at the same time to be thinking about your marketing and business strategy. And I didn't do that as well as I could have. But when your career came out, I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. I know exactly how I'm going to do it. I know the path, the journey, all the assets were there. And so think about those at the same time. Don't think about marketing when your book launches on that day.
Yes, it's almost like the latest that you should start a marketing plan is your publication date. Like it should have actually happened way before that, but we're just so focused on that deadline. Nikki, what would you like to add?
Yeah, a lot of my clients, they say, oh, I have these great stories of things that have happened to me in my life. And I always go, unless you're famous, don't write a memoir and just tell stories about you. No one cares, to be honest. But you can use those stories in a short format to tell lessons and to get people to the point. But yeah, I just love everybody's like, oh, I'm going to tell your grandkids might care, but other than that, probably not too many other folks.
I had someone approach me who wanted to do a children's book. It was like a big passion, but they had no business around it. Like they had a whole other business. And I was like, that's a pretty expensive endeavor. Do you know that you can just have books printed like one at a time through these photo album companies? Like you could just have beautifully illustrated book and then just like print 5 copies and give it to all the relatives. And that's it. Like they were like, oh, I was like, I don't want to like dampen your mood about this, but having like 4,000 copies of a children's book in your garage is maybe not the right. Yeah. Robin, what advice would you offer somebody?
You don't have to write your entire IP in one book. I was doing a mastermind. I was leading a mastermind for some NSA speakers, and this guy was like worried about this book that he was in the middle of writing, and he was telling us all about it. And he was doing this, and I said, you know what? You've got 3 books there. You have 3 books there. Just write one. If you cut it off at this place, then you've got your first book, and you're probably already finished that first book. Because as we know, like most people, like I probably have at least 75 business books that I've read the first 3 or 4 chapters of. Like, and I know that we all do. So it's like, don't put everything into one
Right.
book. It's like, make it shorter, make it sweeter, make it to the point, and get that one point done, and then you're done, and then you've got material for the next 2.
And if you write a book series, you can trademark the book series. You cannot trademark an individual title, but you can trademark a series. And of course, selling book 1 is easier when you have books 2 and 3. As we wrap up, I would just love to hear your contact info. How can people find you and follow your work? Robin and then Nikki. Robin, what are the best ways for people to find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn all the time. That's my favorite social media to post on and be on. Robin Hatcher, Robin with a Y. And you can email me at robin@speaketcetera.com. Or my
Awesome.
website is robinhatcher.com. So, yeah.
All right. We'll put all these links in the show notes. And what about you? I think I said Nikki. Nikki.
It's the Nikki Green, wherever you can find me on the internet, social media, etc. Not to be confused with any other Nikki Green. It is the Nikki Green.
I love this. Wow. TheNikkiGreen.com. I love it. So Steve, how about you?
Probably the easiest place is either LinkedIn. I'm Steve Yacovelli, Yacovelli. There's not many of us in the world. Or topdoglearning.biz, B-I-Z, is my main business page. You can see the book link at the very top.
Fantastic. We're going to put all these links in the show notes at bizbookpubhub.com. We'll also find show notes from all the other episodes we release every Tuesday and Thursday, and all the hub partners like the great Jen T. Grace and Ruth Schwartz we gave a shout out to earlier, and also community events that we can invite you to. We have one for writers and authors and another for speakers. Lots and lots of resources for you at bizbookpubhub.com. Panel, thank you so much for joining us today. Really, really appreciate it.